There is another which we call unintentional slippage from the path defined by the scriptures, which we say human frailty, in the sense that we do as much as possible to structure our life to be fulfilling, or at least according to the scripture that we believe in, but sometimes we slip, we make a mistake, we sin.
Hence a process for forgiveness.
Exactly.
And reconciliation.
But there must be an understanding that as soon as we realize that we have made a mistake, come back and stay on the path that the scripture wants. These two are completely different. What we have in reality, the contradictions in life that we see, whether in Christian society or any other society, it's not the shortcoming which what we call temporary slippage that comes due to human frailty. It's the deliberate misinterpretation of the text that causes the problem and the conflict. Otherwise,
and yet even the deliberate part can be done with sincerely good intentions?
Well, as long as there is ego, that good intention serves ego rather than anything else.
Yeah, hence the old adage, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, I mean, they all say that what they are doing, the misinterpretation and everything else, they have good intention. But really, we have to ask, who actually decides these good intentions? What are the criteria or the framework to make a judgment? If I am the judge, the jury, and the executioner at the same time, then I will never make mistakes. But if no,
unless you're willing to judge yourself.
That's what I mean. In most cases, when we have this notion of hypocrisy, the hypocrites, if they are the one to make a judgment as to whether their action is correct or not, they would never make such a conclusion or reach such a conclusion that their actions were incorrect. They're always in good intention and justification for it.
It does seem to me that every example of hypocrisy that I can imagine, the one thing that they're not looking at is themselves.
That's correct.
I mean, there's always this element of an abysmal lack of self-awareness.
And this is why fundamentally in every faith, self-reflection as a first step is so critical. And looking at yourself, and somebody, I mean, a friend of mine was using this Swiss cheese paraphrasing or metaphor that says, so long as we have so many holes in ourselves as shortcomings, we really should not pay attention or focus on somebody else's shortcomings until we deal with our own.
Exactly.
But the hypocrites don't see it that way. They don't see any shortcoming in themselves because they never reflect on themselves, and their own way of thinking or their own judgment is the criteria rather than an external criteria that I judge myself with.
An observation I've noticed over the years is, it seems frequently, maybe always, I'm not sure, what people object to in others is very often the qualities in themselves that they despise the most, and which they're therefore the least willing to own or acknowledge. And so the answer to that would be, when you see something in somebody else that makes you angry, to stop for a moment and think to yourself, do I do that?
Well, that's if you are, what the mystics or those who focus on a reflection in our tradition or any other tradition, they talk about. There is a tradition in our faith that says, never, if you are not prepared to accept shortcomings in anybody else, never do something that if other person or other people do it, you will criticize them.
Okay.
So you
I got a little bit confused by the...
never do something that you are not prepared to accept other person doing it. If somebody if I'm not prepared to accept somebody else dealing with me in a bad manner, I shouldn't deal myself with other people in a bad manner.
Okay.
If I'm not prepared to see hypocrisy and double standard when it comes to other people dealing with me, I shouldn't be the one who deal with others in double standard. And you can use this in every step. If you don't like people lying to you, don't lie to people. If you don't, and so on.
It's all the corollaries of the golden rule,
Yes.
which exists in every belief system.
In every belief system. So that's the fundamental problem, that when we see people, and there is another issue here, particularly in the at least Protestant Christians in post-Reformation, in which you see this repeatedly, where faith, which was predicated on action, or what the liberation theologians would call praxis, was interpreted as mere belief. As long as you believe in Jesus, or in the Muslim case in Muhammad, or in Moses or somebody else, then you are saved. You don't need to do anything.